Well, Brian and I were wrong. We lost. We suck. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, Nate, your show has improved.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Here with Matt, Jason, and Brian. And about a week and a half ago, we all did a podcast. We all did a video cast, and we kind of gave our predictions of the Michigan-Ohio State game. And we all committed to come back and do a post-mortem after the game. So how's it going, guys?
Well,
Good.
we're all wrong.
Well, Brian and I were wrong. We lost. We suck. I'm done.
Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, Nate, your show has improved.
Wow.
Were
Nice.
any of us right, Nate? Were any of us right on the predictions? I know you're a little bit higher on Michigan.
I don't want to put you guys, I don't want to like make you guys seem silly. I don't even remember the predictions.
Well, I will say, I would not to pat myself on the back, but you were all doom and gloom and, you know, Michigan fan PTSD. We have no shot. We just want it to be close. And I told you there was a path. You know,
Yeah,
I
didn't
thought,
believe
I
it.
really thought Michigan could run the ball on Ohio State, and I just didn't think that they'd be able to score, you know, in the 30s. And I was wrong. I mean, they ran the ball down Ohio State's throat, and from the jump, pretty much. And you know, give a lot of credit to Michigan. I think they were super creative. The game plan worked to perfection. You know, everything that they needed to happen, it happened right to the you know, there was a perfect Michigan script. And it couldn't have gone better. Yep. And you know, pretty much everything went wrong for Ohio State, except for, you know, they didn't turn the ball over, but everything else went, you know, colossally wrong for them. So congrats, man. I mean, it's got to be good for Michigan fans, and you know, it's pretty cool that it sucks to lose. I hate it. I'm still kind of reeling from it, but
You were bitter on
cool
Saturday, brother. You were very
sorry,
bitter.
dude. I didn't mean to take it out on you. You weren't the only one that was blowing me up, though. That was the problem. I got another buddy who's an Ohio State fan, but he doesn't like Ryan Day for some reason.
Wow.
Weird.
So he was blowing me up the whole game about C. And I'm like, dude, I can't take your shit anymore. I don't want to hear it.
I took no
So,
offense to that. I
yeah.
took no offense to that at all. Now, remember, guys, I did predict 45-21, and at the beginning of the game, one team would punch the other one in the face a couple times and set them on their heels. So I was mostly right. I just picked the wrong
You were right.
team.
You just the wrong team.
Yeah.
Well, I do remember, I think Matt had probably the closest score prediction. What was it? 52-0 Ohio State?
52 to
Not that I'm
nothing.
trying to remember.
Yeah.
That's no homer call on that at all. Matt's prediction was not based
Did you
on
see my fortune
emotion.
cookie I got the other day?
Your sports team will be very successful this year. Which sports team?
It might be basketball. Maybe they're.
Stop
we
the
beat
Buckeyes.
Duke.
Yeah,
We
Ohio
beat
State just
someone
beat
Duke in
Duke.
basketball. Maybe it's the wrong sport.
Well, so about that game though, like I was doom and gloom because what happened on Saturday was so much had to go right for Michigan to win, and so much had to go wrong for Ohio State, and it all had to happen on the same day in the same game and consistently for 3.5 hours. So I was doom and gloom because I didn't think all of that could come together. And
Well,
so
I was really concerned because a lot of the things that we had seen consistently, especially from Ohio State's defense from week one, we continued to see. You know, there was the same issues with stopping teams running to the boundary, dealing with bunch sets, dealing with multiple tight ends. You know, it was linebackers in the wrong gaps. It was, you know, for the first time all year, I think Denzel Burke played like a freshman. Part of that was certainly the conditions, but you know, they just got thumped. They were pushed around. We'd seen it going all the way back to the Minnesota game, and Oregon certainly did it to them. And you know, I think we were talking a little bit about what's Michigan's game plan. Well, it was the Oregon game plan. It's, hey, control the line of scrimmage, and when you get opportunities in the red zone, you got to punch in touchdowns. And that was the difference in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond just being able to control the line of scrimmage, when Michigan got opportunities, they stuck it in there and just ran it for touchdowns. And Ohio State had trouble in the red zone. We saw that all year long.
Yeah.
You know, in the games that were close, Ohio State struggled to score in the red zone. And it's really frustrating when you see it's not necessarily just one mistake. It's little things here and there that add up into problems. And, I thought that it was really important for Ohio State to get up early and get Michigan out of their game plan, and it never happened. And really, if not for some unbelievable play from CJ Stroud and the skill position guys for Ohio State, that was a complete blowout. I mean, we saw some unbelievable wide receiver play from Ohio State.
Really well.
And CJ Stroud played his butt off. I mean, for a redshirt freshman in that game, and I thought the Oregon game too. It's just unfair to put a quarterback that young in a position where he's got to carry the entire team. Because I mean, time and again, when Ohio State just needed one defensive stop in that second half, they just couldn't get it. And there's just too much pressure riding on CJ Stroud.
It is. And through the game, and even though I wanted Michigan to win, I kept noticing like how good the receivers were for Ohio State.
They made some crazy catches, some like Hall of Fame level catches.
But I always thought, my gosh, they need to throw deep. I know they've got Aiden Hutchinson, and he's going to make it hard to sit back and get enough time to throw deep. Yeah. But those receivers, and Michigan was playing two high safeties the whole time because they saw what happened to Michigan State, right? So I just thought, you've got these three receivers. They are good enough to overcome two high safeties. They really are. Those receivers are amazing.
But what you said was right, though.
Why are they not throwing deep?
They didn't have time. Ohio State got beat on straight rushes.
Yeah.
Not even blitz, like straight rushes. Like Brian,
man front.
Question for you. The last couple of weeks, we'd seen a little of that stuff we talked about earlier in the season, cleaned up a little bit on the lines and stuff, and like the defense. I mean, they reverted back to early season performance, didn't they?
Well, I think a couple things happened. One was they thought their dudes were better than Michigan's, and they were wrong. I mean, Hutchinson was the best player on the field.
For sure.
And he was absolutely dominant. And Ohio State's typically had that guy, especially a number 97, coming into that game over the last few years. And this time it was Michigan's guy. And no one guy could block him. And I think schematically, I was really surprised that Ohio State has shown a lot of two tight end packages in the preceding games. I don't think they ever used, other than like in goal line, they never really used the two tight end sets, and they never max protected. And I was really surprised because there were a couple times when Rucker did a pretty good job of run blocking against Hutchinson, but they never left him into pass protect. And that, to your point, Nate, I was surprised that they didn't take a shot here or there in max protection and just let the receivers do their thing. Mm-hmm. But they just never did it. And then the other thing that was really strange was the last few games, they hadn't done as many check with me's at the line of scrimmage where, they line up and they're spending a bunch of time looking to the sideline. There were some weird things that seemed like were coming on the play calls that were taking a long time. Mm-hmm. And it allowed Michigan to make a lot of adjustments defensively. So it was very uncharacteristic. It did not look like the same offense at all, really, from the Purdue and the Michigan State game. And I don't know why, because I don't think that there was a lot that Michigan was doing scheme-wise that was that different from what they were expecting. They were rotating, their safeties down and doing some coverage things, but everybody does that, and they were, it was really strange. And then I think there were times too when they really wanted to be able to run the ball, and some of the inexperience of Travion Henderson really showed in this game. I think there were holes to be hit against Michigan's defense, and he either didn't see him or he was reluctant to cut back or hit the right hole, and unfortunately, I'm not one to blame referees, but I mean, a 10-2 penalty split was a little ridiculous when full well there were holds on both sides. Right. But the holding call on Stroud's touchdown, now they went ahead and scored the touchdown on that drive, but I thought Ohio State fans have been calling for Stroud to run the ball all season long, and that was his best run by far. And there was a phantom holding call that brought it back. But there were, it was very odd. There were some weird things, I think, schematically that we had not seen. And were kind of surprising because I think other teams like Michigan State ran some two tight end stuff against Michigan and was successful. So I thought we would see more of it, and we just didn't.
It's interesting. Yeah. What do you think as far as that? Because I thought when couple weeks ago, I saw Ohio State's going to have to play against Michigan State, ranked number 7. Next game right after, they're going to have to play number 5 Michigan at the time.
Mhm.
I just thought at the time that's a tough way to end. I mean, that's a tough thing
Very.
to do.
Yeah, very.
And beating Michigan State the way they did, there had to have been a little bit of "I'm pretty awesome" seeping in to the Buckeyes' heads. I mean, Matt, do you think, am I on base there? Do you think that may have had something to contribute? Is there a little bit of Miami versus Ohio State 2002?
I actually think you're right. I think you're right about that. I think that was probably the wrong time to be feeling a little bit too cocky. Like when you just destroy a top 10 team like that, you're probably going to be, reading your press clippings a little bit too much. And then also, I mean, it's just amazing that, even if the teams are, like let's say Ohio State is a little bit better than Michigan from year to year, it's still very hard to just continually beat a team because they're going to have the revenge factor every single year because they're always losing. So eventually, like you usually wouldn't think it would take that long, but I mean, eventually the team is going to finally like let up a little bit and not think that, like I just deserve to win this game because I always do. And you combine that, with the fact that they just completely blew. I mean, I think if they didn't get that crazy quick lead against Michigan State, I'm sure that that they would have been able to run all over us too, because it's not like we stopped him. I mean, he was getting 5 or 6 yards to carry on like 6 carries, but he only had 6 carries.
Walker,
he
got hurt.
The game got away from their running the football.
It snowballed on them.
Yeah,
they were. Yeah, so it's just the opposite thing happened against Michigan, where like we have our normal return guy wasn't in the game, so we put in a backup who is a freshman who doesn't start. I don't know why we wouldn't have a more sure-handed guy back there, especially after he screwed it up the first time. Put in someone who can actually reliably catch it, and that was just a horrible decision on the coaching staff. I mean, it's not second guessing. That's just dumb.
Hey, the same thing with the running back, right?
Special teams was a big problem in this game. I mean, usually we do really well with special teams in it.
It was the worst coverage. I'm glad you said that, Matt, because I thought it was the worst coverage they've had all year. I mean, in the second half, they got 2 scores, and in both of them, they let Michigan start at the 35 and the 40. On both of them, they haven't done that all year. All year,
yeah.
It was crazy.
So that's like hidden yards that, and I'm surprised that the first half was only 14-13. I mean,
well, the interception in the end zone that Michigan threw.
Yeah. And that was a bad interception.
It was bad.
It was a really stupid throw.
But that made a big difference.
Yeah, it was. And I tell you, and give Gaddis a lot of credit. I thought really there were a couple things that really made a huge difference in that game. Offensively for Michigan, they were lights out on 2nd and long. Because there were so many times Ohio State would stop them on first down. It'd be 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10. And they were getting free access to the flats. And that's been a problem for Ohio State's defense all year. And they were getting 7 yards, 10 yards, 8 yards. Like they lived in 3rd and 2 all game long. And one of those plays was the long pass that McNamara hit. And it was at a pivotal time in the game. It was a 2nd and 8. And now they were in plus territory, but that was the first time I've seen anybody hit a fade on Denzel Burke in a long time. And they hit him for the fade that set up a touchdown, and they hit him for a PI later in the game that set up a touchdown. So that on offense was a huge reason I thought they were successful. And then they tackled their asses off in that game. How many times did Michigan tackle in the open field?
One-on-one.
One-on-one. And if you went back to both, I thought that was going to be a huge problem for them. Because Ohio State, all season long, you'd see Jackson Smith and Jigba, or one of these guys, like, catch a little hitch, missed tackle, 70-yard touchdown. Travion Henderson in the hole. None of it. Like, they didn't miss a tackle the entire game. They did an unbelievable job. And you go back to the Michigan State game, they missed a boatload of tackles in that game. Like, I did not think that they were capable of tackling that well. They were unreal in the open field tackling. So I thought those were 2 like really major points in the game.
Well, that's one thing too. I mean, all those things had to come together in that game. I mean, everything had to be perfect for Michigan to win that game, and it was still contested at the end. I mean, I know they were running the way they were, but
It was
I
never
really
really
thought, like,
that
Ohio
close,
State-
though. Ohio State would score, then Michigan would score immediately. Then
Yeah,
Ohio
and
State would have this
This,
7-minute drive to score. Michigan would score in 2. So
yeah,
Yeah.
their
And
defense was just pathetic. I mean,
Buckeyes
this is,
moved the
I think,
ball.
yeah, well, man, Matt said it on the last show that this is the worst linebacker play we've seen in God knows how long. They were atrocious this
yeah,
year.
that
I
second
mean,
level
it's
was bad.
atrocious.
Mhm.
So like it's so bad when you watch. I haven't even started going back and looking at all the film, but just the watching it during a game, you could tell Simon's in a bad position, getting blocked. There were a couple times you had both middle linebackers or inside linebackers in the same gap. Ooh,
I
Matt.
think Matt is calling us on two phones.
It's rough.
There we go.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, so I think the linebacker play was markedly different on both sides of the ball. I thought the defensive line play was different. I mean, it was just.
Well, Michigan won on both lines, right?
They
Were
did.
dominated both lines, and that was like casual fan of both teams, right? I've watched Ohio State play more just because I'm in Columbus, and that's right. I don't really see a lot of Michigan, but boy, I was surprised about how night and day different the line play was. Michigan versus Ohio State, both sides of the ball. Not
Yeah,
even close.
because the Buckeyes were playing really good on the line, really. I mean, ever since the Oregon game.
Yeah.
And they were just improving gradually.
Yeah, they were getting better.
They were leading in sacks, I think.
They
in the
got
Big Ten,
smoked.
right?
Like I said earlier, they felt like they regressed a lot in this Michigan game. Now, I think Michigan stepped up to the hype and played great. And Nate, as you know, the old saying in Michigan goes, nobody beats Michigan football 10 years in a row. They held up to that standard, but like they were night and day different. That was the biggest thing to me is how different that was.
Yeah, and when looking at the Buckeyes and their offense, they moved the ball consistently. Their drives just took forever, and even when they scored,
they were like the old
that's
trestle
great if you're
drives where
leading.
you're going 7-8 minutes for a score.
They were throwing to the receivers successfully.
Well, I mean, how many
moving
times
the
they
ball
had to
between
pick
the
up a
20.
fourth down? Yeah, they had to go for fourth. They were, they converted well, but that was a big problem. They were having to convert fourth downs just to keep drives alive. And like I said, give a lot of credit to Stroud in the way he played. I mean, he made some unbelievable throws. His wide receivers made some unbelievable catches. But if not for that, that's a complete, just a complete blowout.
Yeah, I mean, it played into Michigan's hands for trying to run out the clock, because I think the last two touchdown drives the Buckeyes made in the fourth quarter were both over 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, that's way too long.
They could not get big chunks of yardage on offense.
Yeah, it really was.
And Ohio State was known for big plays, and they did not have. Did they have one big play?
When was the last game that we had where we didn't have any short drives like that? Like every single drive was very long.
Hey, Matt, mute one of your lines.
All right.
There you go.
When was the last time that we didn't have any quick scoring drives? I can't remember the last game that we weren't able to do that.
But part of that too, like I was saying, Matt, is if you go back to some of these games, even all the way back to the beginning of the season, how many times did CJ Stroud throw a screen pass to Travion Henderson that went for a touchdown, or a little 7-yard hitch that went 60 yards for a touchdown? Like, there were a lot of throws deep, but there were also a lot of short ones that got broken, and we didn't get any of those. And even when it was blocked up right on the offensive line, Henderson didn't hit it. So, and that's, I will say the one kind of silver lining in this whole thing we've talked about is Ohio State's an extremely young team, and they were relying on a bunch of really young guys to play.
Right.
I think I saw the stat, and it could be wrong, but I saw that Michigan played like 27 seniors in that game, and Ohio State played 8. So, I mean, that tells you it's a young team. It's extremely talented, even though they're going to lose those wide receivers, a couple of those wide receivers to the pros and a couple of their, offensive and defensive linemen. They're still the guys that they were counting on young guys to play a lot of major snaps for them. And I think they'll learn from that and get better. But they've got to figure this defense out. I think they've got to make staff changes on the defensive side to get this thing fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things was the I just couldn't believe like the defense was just as bad as I'm trying to remember the last time. I guess Bianca Batuka running in '95 was
Yeah,
like maybe the
probably.
last time I felt like this helpless, like watching someone try to tackle anybody. And then also, I don't know whether I was more surprised. I mean, I knew that the defense had issues, like you know, on linebacker and in secondary, but I wasn't prepared for the offensive line where we have, you know, 2 guys that are supposed to go in the first round, another guy that's going to go in the second. I mean, all the guys, you know, 4 of the 5 guys are supposed to be top 2 round offensive linemen, and they just got completely eaten up. And I wasn't expecting that. I mean, we'd only given up 12 sacks all year, and we gave up, 5 or 6, and then, you know, I think Hutchinson had, 15. He set some sort of record for quarterback hurries, like on the season by anybody.
Right.
Like no one's had that many hurries in a game.
Yeah.
I didn't realize
Well,
that guy was as
in the
big an
Power
animal
Five.
as he was. He was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's never had a game as good as he did against us. That was his best game of the year. But actually, going back to the main points I wanted to make was I think that, you know, Ohio State is going to get their defense fixed. We're going to hire some new people. We're probably going to turn over a lot of the staff. But I think aside from that, I think that this is a very strange year for college football in general because of COVID last year. Everyone was given an extra year. So a lot of teams, like why is Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and a lot of teams that are normally really good. I mean, we have a super young team this year, and so does Bama, and so do a lot of other teams like that, and Clemson too. And the teams that are doing well, like Wake Forest is doing well, and like all these other teams, like Michigan. I mean, when was the last time Michigan was good? So you have all these teams, like there's a reason, like all these guys that should have been in the NFL or just doing something else with their life, but they came back for a 6th year. And you look at the teams like even Minnesota is like way better than normal because they have, you know, a whole team of 6- and 7-year guys that have played there forever. And this, you know, this is a 1-year thing. So next year things are going to go back to normal, and all these teams that are, you know, normally lower ranked teams that don't perform as well are going to see reality hit. Like, especially if you look like a team like Maryland, anyone who's not an elite team is going to lose half their team to the portal, as we found out today. Like they lost 11 players today.
Well, and that's the one thing, I don't know if you saw it, Matt, but, you know, for anybody who thinks that this loss was going to hurt recruiting, Ohio State just picked up was Devin Brown, the quarterback from Utah, right before the show. So they picked up, you know, they lose Jack Miller to the transfer portal, and they pick up an even higher ranked 22 kid for that quarterback room. And they're out on the trail because they're now having to prepare for, you know, this Big Ten championship game. But I will say, you know, it's funny, we were talking about last time about, you know, the state of the programs and what's acceptable. And I can tell you a 2-loss season in which Ohio State doesn't beat Michigan, doesn't win the division, doesn't win the conference, and doesn't make the playoff. The only way to look at it is it's a failure. And it's not going to be tolerated because that's the expectation in that program. So you know, there are going to be changes.
Speaking of that and the changes, what's next for Ohio State then? Like, probably a defensive coordinator hire. I
would guess. There were rumors about.
Sure, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see what staff changes they make. You know, there was talk that Marcus Freeman was their first choice, but it looks like he's actually going to get the head coaching job at Notre Dame.
Somewhere.
So no, I think they're actually going to elevate him to head coach because I think Brian Kelly wanted him, you know, and basically tapped him as the successor there.
Mm-hmm.
So he's
it's going to be either. Is he going to be acting, or do you think they're going to give him the full?
I was reading just before we came online. I'm not trying to report anything, but there were some reports on Twitter that he actually has been offered and will accept the job.
It's probably a good call.
It is a good call because you kind of wonder, the more I thought about it, he runs a really different scheme than what Ohio State's run with Larry Johnson there. And so I think the guy to watch the most, even though the talk will be about Matt Barnes and Kerry Combs, is actually Larry Johnson and what he's going to do. You know, obviously they gave Al Washington a bunch of money to stay, but yeah, I mean, he's a dyed-in-the-wool four down lineman kind of guy, and you see a lot of these defenses are going to more tight front, mint front, you know, 3-3-4 type looks to kind of combat some of the spread offense stuff. So it'll be interesting to see I just want to see somebody get in there that preferably is maybe a guy like Jeff Hafley, where he came from the NFL, but had some chops in both, college and the NFL that can run some diverse schemes. I think that was one of the best things that, Harbaugh did was going out and getting
Mike McDonald.
Mike
Mike
McDonald
McDonald.
from the Ravens that's a very diverse scheme that they run there, at least in the front seven. And I think that helps because, a lot of this stuff is not necessarily, you're not going to blitz every down. It's a matter of disguising and trying to confuse the teams that you're going up against. And a lot of times it's not a huge change. Yeah.
Who did we raid last time? We needed some defensive coaches.
Oh,
We stole Michigan's
You got Greg
line coach
Madison.
and linebacker coach. Maybe we should take their defensive coordinator this time. See if that works out any better.
that'd be
that
a
was
lateral move.
Yeah, it was a Harbaugh to Harbaugh connection there anyway. So I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you got, and Brian, I know you can't stay for too much longer, but and I know the Buckeyes aren't going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be maybe hoping for Utah.
Oh no,
in the
Matt
Rose
figured it
Bowl.
out. He figured out the scheme for the Buckeyes to make
figured
the
it out.
playoffs.
I don't want to hear it. I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to hear it.
We'll wait.
I don't think it's as crazy as everyone thinks.
I don't want
Okay,
to. I mean, why do you want to? Why
let's
do you want to
start-
see them get their ass kicked again? Their defense is trash, Matt. Like I don't want to play. I'm done with this defense, man.
If you can get up early, on someone, then you can it all depends on the matchups. Like if you play a team that doesn't have a great running game, then we're fine. It's all about there's no elite. Michigan's the only elite running team that's left, and if we don't play them again,
I mean, Georgia can run the ball.
Strong.
Yeah.
Georgia can run the ball.
They have a run. They have a running game, but their running game isn't as good as Michigan.
Man, I don't. I'm done. I'm good for this year. I just want to see them get out of.
Well, what's the bowl game?
A bunch of young guys. Just get the
no,
young guys
you're
to play
going to the
again.
Rose
Let's
You
go.
don't want. No, but you're saying you don't want them because you don't want them in the playoffs because you think you're talking like Jonathan, where you're afraid that they're going to lose and they're not going to make.
It's not about losing.
They don't have the ability to do that.
It's not about losing. It's about I don't need to see this defense anymore this year. I don't need to see it. I don't need to see them play
One more
really good
game. There's a
offense.
bowl game. They
I
got a bowl
understand
game.
that, but my point is it's not a matter of I'm tired of this year's been such a roller coaster. Like 1 year, one game, the team is trash. The next week, this is the greatest offense we've ever seen. They're going to beat Georgia. And then, it's been this roller coaster ride all season long. And the reality is they're really not very good on defense. Like really not good. They're really probably bottom half of the Big Ten in defense. And their offense is good, but they're a finesse team. Like they got to get some stuff straightened out. And yeah, they're fun to watch. I'd like to see them play a shootout with somebody who's got a good offense. It'd be fun, or play Oregon again. I don't care who they play, but they don't have any business. They haven't earned the right to be in the playoff. They should not be getting considered for the playoff. They lost twice badly. Like if Alabama loses to
Alabama
Georgia,
would be a fun
they
matchup.
should not be in the playoff. Yeah, I
You
mean,
know
it
what?
would be
Alabama would be
yeah.
a fun matchup because they don't have a
Absolutely.
running game.
No, and well, I think I like Young. He's a pretty good running back, but their offense is. I mean, God, did they struggle? They should have lost that Auburn game. That was
for sure.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
They can't run out the clock.
Tank Bigsby. Thanks, man, for not going. For going out of bounds. Jesus.
Well,
So-
you know what? Ohio State still has the best offense in college football.
Do they?
I'll say that. I mean, they've got Travion Henderson with
Yeah.
the running game, with the pass game. They have the best offense in college football this year.
But here's
So
what's
it's gonna
crazy,
be
Nate.
fun to watch that.
I actually think they would have been better off in the Michigan game playing Maya Williams more. But
Probably.
I love Henderson, but the two of them, they got to get that rotation figured out. They're going to come back really strong. I think the offensive line will be really good next year.
They're
this
young.
4 tackle thing didn't work out very well, but they'll be better. I think we saw in this game that the defensive linemen that Ohio State has are just guys. There's no Chase Young on this team. There's no Joey Bosa on this team. And the closest thing we have to that are freshmen. So let's get the young guys more playing time. That's what I want to see in this bowl game.
How come Haskell Garrett hasn't been starting and he's the best player we have on defense?
I have no idea, Matt. I don't know why they think, Jerron Cage occasionally flashes. I don't understand it. Like Tyleek Williams has played less and less as the season's going on. I don't get it.
Snaps, and he's like one of the best players on our defense.
I don't get it. He led the team in
Every
sacks
time
for
that
most
guy's
of the
in there,
year.
he makes a play.
Yeah, I don't get the defensive rotation at all. You know, I like
Doesn't seem to
Teron
make any
Vincent. I
sense.
was hopeful that he would turn into a really good player, but they just seem like they're just guys. And so, you know, the real impact players that they're going to have in that front seven are super young, or they're coming into the program in 22. So, I mean, if there's no reason to think that the future isn't bright at Ohio State, I mean, and they'll get this thing sorted out.
Who's the worst position coach on? I'm sorry, no. Let me take that back. What position played the worst on defense?
To me, I think the linebackers were it was a mess all year long.
Worse
It's
than the
an
line?
indictment. It has to be worse because when you had guys like Kayvon Pope,
Did any lineman make a
Taraja
tackle?
Mitchell, Dallas Gant, those guys were seniors that were supposed to be the next guys behind when everybody was bitching about, you know, all the linebackers that left the NFL the year before. And they couldn't even get on the field. And by week 3? And then the guys that were coming in there had zero experience. Your best linebackers are converted running back. Like it was bad. Like that, the play was very, very bad. And I think the scheme didn't help them either, because they obviously didn't know where the hell to go in the run fits. And that's got to get sorted out. I think Simon and Eichenberg and Steel Chambers, and those dudes can be good players. They just got to get a scheme that puts those guys in the right place where they're not thinking, they're just playing.
Well, maybe the next big thing really is the defensive coordinator. I mean, look what Michigan did. They were a mess last year.
Absolutely.
So then they pulled in
with
a defensive coordinator, and they were awesome.
Chris Ash did it. You know, Jeff Hafley did it.
Yep,
it's getting the right guy with the right scheme in 1 year. You've got the talent. I mean, you're going to always have talent at Ohio State. Come on. They recruit better than anybody else in the conference. That's the thing, that when you're not getting it out of them, it has to be you gotta lay it at the feet of the coaches eventually. Mm-hmm. And that, but I will say too, I'm not necessarily on shouting from the rooftops, we got to fire everybody, because it was a really, really young roster. And you could tell from the very beginning that it was a total grab bag at safety and linebacker. But I will say they've got to sort of settle into some kind of rotation, because it's like, you can't be mixing and matching your slot personnel. Like Ransom would be in there some, Martinez was in there earlier in the year. Marcus Williamson was playing more. Like, where the hell is Hickman playing? Sometimes in the 2 high, he's a safety. Sometimes he's the leverage guy into the boundary as the linebacker. What the hell? Like, no wonder. And they're caving him in with guards pulling. Well, yeah. Like it's crazy.
What defense did we normally play against Wisconsin?
Well,
formation.
Well, normally we would have had three legit linebackers on the field, but we've been spoiled. I mean, Warner was what they had. Was it Malik Harrison the year before that?
Did we ever use 4 linebackers?
Yeah.
Did we ever use bare front against Wisconsin?
They used it against Alabama, but I think they used that more because they had to.
No defensive backs.
Yeah, well, and they had a couple guys out for their best defensive linemen were out with COVID. But that's what I'm talking about with this whole, like, a lot of teams, like in Alabama, they're going to use a guy like, Will Anderson's technically, I don't know what you want to call him, an edge linebacker, stand-up defensive end, but that's really a 3-man front. Michigan
did the same thing with their other guy.
And you hardly ever see Ohio State stand up. Yeah, Ohio State never stands up there, or very rarely stands up their guys. But we used to see, like, when Chase Young and Nick Bosa were there, sometimes those guys would be lining up as a middle linebacker coming on a blitz, and there was a lot more creativity, I think, in those fronts. I just think there were a lot of things that were just wrong about the scheme. The scheme fits between the defensive line and the linebackers. And this whole idea of when you're playing a team that's got 2 tight ends and a fullback on the field, and you're playing a 210-pound guy as the leverage force player.
So that's what I was asking. Why were we not having more linebackers on the field?
You're a nickel.
Why are you running a nickel
against Michigan?
Yeah, I think I was saying that
the entire game.
That's what I said the whole time before, in leading up to the game. I was like, the 4-2-5 with those guys that they're playing, they're small. They remind me, they remind me of like the Colts. Remember when the Colts with Peyton Manning,
Yep.
they had a defense that was just geared to rush the passer. And so if you could get out ahead of them or keep the game tight, you could pound those kind of defenses. That's what it reminded me of. It was this really small, fast, like versatile defense. But when you're playing Big Ten football in November and you're playing teams like, Minnesota ran 8 offensive linemen at them. It's just when they go heavy personnel and you're not matching that, I don't understand it. I don't get it.
Well, what also hurt the Buckeyes this year is Evan Pryor. I could tell that was a major loss because he was a quarterback back there. I mean, that was the safety back there. He really made everything go there for a while.
You talking about Proctor?
Proctor.
Josh Proctor? Yeah, Josh Proctor.
Evan Pryor is the running back.
Yeah.
Proctor.
Because he hurt him too. No, losing Proctor was huge. I mean, I think there's no doubt that Bryson Shaw was kind of all over the place in the way he played. And I don't want to lay the blame at young players that were kind of thrust into unfair situations, but Proctor was a huge loss for them. And I think he was ready to be an absolute superstar. So I'm hopeful he comes back and is able to get over the shoulder and the leg injuries and can come back, the way Cam Brown did from the Achilles, because he really had a pretty good season considering we didn't even know if we were going to see Cam Brown, when he popped that Achilles last year. So
was he a highly rated guy?
Which guy? Proctor?
Cam Brown.
Cam Brown was pretty highly rated, but he actually came out as a lot of schools were recruiting him as a wide receiver.
Oh,
but he converted and he was the fastest guy. They were saying he was the fastest guy on the team. So he came back from an Achilles injury and had a knee injury early in the year, but he played a lot. I mean, everybody was talking about how good Sevyn Banks was supposed to be, and Sevyn Banks barely played. I mean, really, he wasn't an impact player at all. Yeah. So, I think
Brown's had a great year.
Cam Brown was really good. And but there's no doubt, like losing Proctor, when you're a single high defense and you lose your best safety, like it makes a humongous difference. And that's one of those things I think they will start to change and base more out of a two high safety, defense, probably with more quarters than cover 3. And we'll see. I there's no reason to think that this is, an ongoing thing, especially when Michigan, credit to them. This was a perfect year for them to do this, and I wish them the best going forward. But they had 27 seniors play, and Ohio State had 8. So to Matt's point, these programs that have historically not only been successful but are recruiting at a high level, Clemson's going to be back, Alabama's going to be back, and so it's just for fans of teams like UC, Michigan, Oklahoma State, even Notre Dame. How fun is this year? I mean, the historic powers are out of this thing. Ohio State's not there. Clemson, Ohio State, they're all out.
You guys still have a team in the hunt with Cincinnati. That's your alma mater. Jason's a big fan. I mean, I know it's hard to get excited about that.
Yeah,
I'm excited about it. I didn't even go there, Brian.
I know.
That's my team. UC's my team.
I'm actually more excited that Fickle, if you believe the reports, he turned down Notre Dame to stay there because he's really built a pretty cool thing down there, and they're moving to the Big 12. So it's crazy. We were down there for the Tulsa game, and the difference in the atmosphere from when I was there is night and day. And they weren't trash when I was there. I mean, they had a lot of really good coaches there. They had a pretty decent program, but this is on a different level. I mean,
why would he turn down Notre Dame?
I think he just doesn't want to walk away from what he's built there, and you've seen, D'Antonio and Brian Kelly both use UC as a stepping stone.
Kelly's dream job was Notre Dame. He left.
Yeah. I think,
dream job.
A 10-year run at a place is a long time, and I think Kelly kind of realized like this year, he's taking it as far as he's going to be able to take it.
Well, they have high entrance,
Plus,
it's hard to get in.
Well, and LSU backed up the Brinks truck, and everybody that's gone to LSU's won a national title.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's a terrible job.
LSU is a better job than Notre Dame, Plessinger.
It's a hell of a lot easier to recruit.
It depends what you're doing. I think So it's a combination. So you're going to be able to recruit better at LSU, quite a bit better.
Make
but
more
in
money.
Notre Dame, you're still going to be able to recruit. You'll be able to recruit well in Notre Dame, and you have way more job stability. So it just depends. Like, I mean, you're
Part of a conference
if you
that's
make more money-
automatically like advantage
Oh, when-
of the
when it-
SEC.
Yeah, when this thing expands,
Yeah,
they're
but
gonna have
he-
3 SEC teams in every year.
Yeah. And Notre
Yeah,
Dame's
so
independent, and that
it'll
hurts them.
be, but Notre Dame will be in every year too, because if they're taking 12 teams, Notre Dame
Yeah, but
will be in
Matt-
every year also.
Matt, how many teams in the North recruit on the level of the 5th best team in the South? Like Texas A&M,
Notre Dame does. Notre Dame
not
does.
every year they don't. And so like Notre Dame and Ohio State are the only ones that have a shot. But like I said, I don't blame Kelly for, he's the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. He just hasn't won championships. And when they got into the playoffs, they got boat raced both times. So, that he's going to be able to be.
You think though, you don't think it's riskier to go to LSU, where if you don't play well for like 3 years, it's going to be fired? Whereas like he's never going to get fired at Notre Dame.
Who hasn't won down there?
Yeah.
What coach hasn't won at LSU? Like you're
Well,
not
no,
going to
he
beat
might
Alabama every year.
He might win and then get fired like a year later. Like
Orgeron didn't get fired because he didn't win. He didn't win. He didn't get fired because he didn't win. The not winning sealed the deal, but it was all the other crap that he was doing after they won that national title that ended up costing him that job. Like
you're
went
saying
off the
if he
deep
was
end.
winning, if he was going to the playoffs every year after that, last year and this
They
year,
would have
you
given
think
him a
he would be
hell,
fired?
hell yes. If they wouldn't have had the dip that they've had on the field the last couple of years, they would have forgiven all that stuff. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Guarantee, because that's winning's the only thing that matters down there. But when you're doing all that
That's what I'm
stuff
saying.
off the
So-
field and you're not winning, like if you're winning, if you're leading a clean program down there and you're gonna compete, like you're gonna.
I think all that stuff aside, just not winning alone is enough for him to get canned. No one.
Look, any high-profile
look at
job
how
you're gonna
good
get
Florida
fired
was
at
last
for
year.
not winning. Doesn't matter
I would
where you're at.
Florida had one of their best seasons in a while last year. Their coach.
Florida
I
is
think
a
had the
different
best-
animal.
The best.
Florida's a
best
different
coach.
animal, and Dan Mullen's a different animal.
They almost beat Bama. They were the closest
Yeah.
team to Bama last year.
They're the Nebraska of
their
the
coach
South.
gets fired this year.
No, Florida, the only people that have ever won at Florida were Spurrier and Urban Meyer. Everybody that goes to LSU ends up winning a title at some point. Like if you want to win it, if you want us to get serious about trying to win a title, I think LSU is a very good spot. I would rather be at LSU than Florida. I'd rather be at LSU probably than
What about
USC. I'd rather be at LSU.
USC,
Like,
really?
The only person that's at Pete Carroll won at USC because they were cheating their asses off. Like that was the only reason that they. Now, granted, the rules are different now. I mean, NIL in Los Angeles. Let's see. I think Lane Kiffin.
They were cheating. They were cheating no less than the people in the South.
Well, Florida cheated.
doubt.
The only reason Urban and Spurrier won is because they ignored crimes that happened with the players on the team.
No, I'm not going there. But anyway, the thing with I think Lincoln Riley going to USC is really interesting because the Pac-12 as a conference is very winnable. And the only other team that's really the only other program that's recruiting on an elite level down over there is Oregon. And Cristobal's, he's a very conservative coach. So you put Lane Kiffin, or not, I keep saying Lane Kiffin, Lincoln Riley there is very interesting. But that, again, Oklahoma and Texas are going in the SEC. Well, that's a Lincoln Riley's not going with you. So, how big of a deal is that? Does that make that conference any less winnable? I don't think so. So I think Kelly can have success down there. My thing with him is I just don't know how many ties he's got to recruiting down in the South. So he's got to get guys on that staff that are connected down there to make those inroads. But I don't. Again, I don't blame a guy for.
He tried to steal our running back coach.
Yeah, he did try to get Alford.
Tony Alford turned him down.
Yep.
Well, what happens if the Big Ten, or maybe specifically Ohio State and Michigan, really start to use the NIL? They
have to.
Probably a lot more money with the alumni at Michigan and Ohio State and in that whole conference than there is in all the South. You think about the alumni at Michigan.
Well, listen, man,
or Ohio
I think that's.
State.
How about a guy
There's
like Ronnie
money
Bell?
there.
So how about a guy like Ronnie Bell, right? Tears his ACL and he's coming back, and it may have been an easy decision in the time of NIL, because why not come back, stay and maybe get some endorsement money while you're in school and stay there and then boost your stock. In years past, a guy who was eligible for the draft might have just trained for the combine and gone.
Yeah.
Even if I'm going to get a third or fourth round or fifth round, whatever, great, I'm going to make money. And now they can make fifth round money staying in the program. So
They can.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it seems like Michigan and Ohio State, if they really wanted to take advantage of this NIL and come up with like make a business case for this, they've got the resources to do that. Maybe they won't do it.
Well,
Maybe
no,
they
they're gonna
will
do
at
it.
some
I think you're
point.
going to see it too with walk-ons. Before you're going to get a much better quality walk-ons with
True.
NIL at programs like Ohio State and Michigan. But we were, my boss is actually a Michigan fan.
Like
We were
Nebraska
talking
with the black shirts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Wisconsin's done it for years. I mean, they may not be the most skilled dudes, but they're all 22. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and you're still going to be pumping out. That's the thing. I think, the only program I maintain, the only program that's really recruiting, that's in the North, that's recruiting on the level of those top tier teams is Ohio State. And so there's really no reason to think that Ohio State's going anywhere, but you're not going to be
Penn
able.
State's been doing well too.
They have been. In fact, they're leading the conference in recruiting, so far this year. And Franklin's been able to recruit. He just can't coach. He's such a poor in-game coach that they always end up
If
having.
it weren't for the coaching part of being a coach,
It'd be great. Be a great coach.
That's
Right.
awesome.
So
All right.
them
it
keeping him
reminds
for
me of
10
a
years.
certain Cincinnati Reds baseball coach.
So to close us out here, let's
Oh.
talk about like this year and the playoffs. Let's hear what you predict for the
Georgia.
playoffs. Who's going to be in the playoffs and who's going to win?
Yeah.
Let's hear that.
Georgia, Michigan, UC,
Ooh, yeah.
Oklahoma State.
That's interesting. Oklahoma State. Okay. They're not so you
It's
say
not going to
they're
happen.
Alabama.
That's what I want.
No, I think that
Georgia's
is
going
what's
to beat
going to happen.
Alabama. Georgia's going to beat Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Oklahoma
That's what you
State,
think too,
Michigan, Cincinnati. Michigan's going to roll all over Iowa. Iowa will be lucky to get 9 points. Let's face it.
I hope you're right.
Iowa's not that good.
Oh, that game's going to be 15-9. So let's wait. It's just going to go.
That's a little high.
My prediction is
gonna go
20.
under on that.
My prediction is 24-9 for Big Ten championship, Michigan. But
That's gonna
Michigan,
be
Georgia, UC, Oklahoma State.
watching
Yeah.
that game is gonna make your eyes bleed. It's gonna be so painful.
not
It's gonna set
watching
the game of
it.
football
Not
back
it.
20 years.
Yeah, not it. Kirk Ferentz
Not
wants 20 punts in that game. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Ryan, what is that your prediction?
It is actually. I think I like Oklahoma State to beat Baylor, but Baylor's a pretty good team, and Oklahoma State almost, spit the bit last week and lost to Oklahoma. But it just shows there is a lot more parity this year. I think Matt hit it on the head. I think the COVID year definitely has a lot to do with it, and it's just in the transfer portal. It's just really, really weird. And it's just, I think this is the way it's going to be. And it's, if Oklahoma's, the problem is Notre Dame, I think the committee would love to put Notre Dame in,
Of course.
but,
Oh, yeah.
but Oklahoma, but they have no quality wins on their schedule and nobody else to play.
And
so if
UC
Oklahoma-
stomped them at home too.
I mean, UC's in as long as they beat Houston. So if they take care of business against Houston, they're in. And Oklahoma State would be getting, and quite frankly, Nate, as from a Michigan standpoint, I don't think you could have asked for a better group of teams, because even Georgia, as good as they are, they play the same style as Michigan. They've got a little more downfield capability, and I think obviously they have better athletes across the board, but it's that same style of football. And so but like UC, we've seen teams run on UC, we've seen teams throw on UC.
Yeah.
I like UC's, like they have some offense. I like Ritter. I think he's the most dynamic offensive probably player singular player in the playoffs.
They lose focus though during games for whole quarters.
They do. Well, and the other thing is like they're pretty limited. Like what is the Pierce, the one wide receiver? He's a really good deep threat. But if you take him away, and I do think getting Ford back healthy has helped them too, because they
definitely they couldn't
when
run
he went out,
him.
they couldn't run. So but none of those. I think Georgia talent-wise is head and shoulders above anybody else in that playoff. But their style is not like a wide open. It's not like LSU 2 years ago or Alabama last year in terms of their offensive capabilities. And the other couple teams are just, I mean, they're decent teams. I don't think Oklahoma State's anything special. I don't think Notre Dame's anything special either. So it's pretty wide open. And Michigan, if they handle their business, they should be in the championship game against Georgia.
They could win a national championship. Would any of you guys be surprised if Michigan ends up winning?
I would be surprised
shocked.
I would be surprised if they can really do anything offensively against Georgia's defense.
Okay.
That's the problem. I still think that Michigan's offense is
not great quarterback
limited.
play. Not great quarterback play, really.
Well, I think McNamara can do some things. He's just limited. Like he's not a great downfield thrower. And I think ultimately you got to have a quarterback who can make some plays in the run game, which they kind of do with McCarthy. And you have to hit some big plays down the field to loosen that defense up. But man, Georgia's defense is just so damn good.
It is good.
And I just don't think there's anybody in the country that's going to stand toe to toe with them. But we're going to find out. I mean, I think talent-wise, the only team talent-wise, the most talented team they're going to play is Alabama. But Alabama hasn't played all that well all year long. They're kind of similar to Ohio State. That's why I actually like Matt's idea of kind of Ohio State and Alabama in a rematch, because both those teams have been weird all year. Super talented, but super weird.
Yeah.
So
speaking of Matt, what's your prediction for the playoff? I want to hear
you go first.
Me first? Okay. I think Alabama's going to beat Georgia in the SEC championship, and they're going to screw everything up.
that would be a very
basically is going to screw everything up, and then Oklahoma State's going to beat Baylor. And then the committee is going to have a really nasty decision to have to make between Oklahoma State and Cincinnati. Wow. And I don't know what they're going to do, but it's going to be hard for them to put Cincinnati in after Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma. And then they turn around and then beat Baylor in a championship game.
Nate, that would be such a 2021 thing to have happen. It is. Yeah. And those poor Cincinnati fans again would be just hosed at the end of an undefeated year. Yeah. God, that would be crazy. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, if you've got a one-loss conference champion out of the Big 12 that their only loss was on the road to Iowa State in a close game, that's going to be hard to keep them out. And Georgia being number one all year long, if that's a close game, like I'm sure, it goes down to one of those Georgia-Alabama field goal games. God bless it. Then we're just going to look back at that Auburn game and just go, Tank Bigsby, you bastard, just go down,
Exactly. That's what I think. And then Michigan's going to have to play Georgia at number 2 versus number 3, and Michigan's probably going to lose.
Oh, God, please don't. Please, anything but a rematch of Alabama-Georgia for the championship.
Yeah, I think you've said it a couple times over time. They're not going to have a rematch.
Not in the semis. Not in the semis, but they can, if they can't, I think they'd be okay with it in the finals, but they're not going to set them up in the semis.
Yeah, agree.
So, wow.
All right, Matt, let's hear it.
Jason, what was your prediction?
Georgia, Michigan, Oklahoma State, UC.
Okay. So first, I'm going to give you my Hail Mary prediction that I'm praying.
Wait a minute. I
Hail Mary.
We shot this down. We shot this down in the beginning. Like, I'm not allowing this to happen.
Just don't pontificate. Just do it quickly.
I don't want to hear it.
Georgia's going to beat Alabama.
If you say Ohio State's in this thing, I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't even want to hear it.
Can I
you
mute
can mute them.
I don't
you
care
say
what
Ohio
happens
State,
with Michigan.
If you say Ohio State, I'm leaving now. Swear to God.
All right. And what I actually think is going to happen, though, I do think that, so there's only 2 undefeated teams this year. Being undefeated, even against a bad schedule, it's almost impossible. And while I commend UC for doing a great job, Houston is also a really good team. Their quarterback is, I think, the hottest quarterback in the country the last 5 weeks. I think he's going to beat UC in a close game. And so they're going to be out.
Okay.
I think that Oklahoma State is a better team than Baylor, but I think that they're going to lose because they know they have the pressure and Baylor doesn't. And it's much easier to play that game when you don't have the pressure. I have no faith in Oklahoma State to be able to win that game with all the pressure, knowing that they're going to likely be in the playoffs if they win it. So I think they're going to lose. So then the Big 12 is out. UC is out.
Wait a minute. Can I interrupt for just a second? I really feel like he's weaseling his way into his original.
This is what he's hoping, not what he thinks is going to happen.
I see where this is going.
We all know that.
Sorry,
but no, actually, that was the goal. I was wondering if Nate was going to let me continue, but I think it's going to be. I think Georgia's going to beat Alabama, but it's not going to be as big as that. So it's going to come down to Alabama and Notre Dame for that fourth spot, and I think they're going to give it to Alabama because Gary Barta said at the end when he was asked, "Are you going to take into consideration if any players or coaches are missing from their team in the playoffs?" And he said that he would. So to me, that means that they're obviously looking at Alabama having a second loss and going in head-to-head with Notre Dame, who doesn't have a coach. So I think that they're going to look at that and they're going to be like, okay, well, they played a relatively close game against the number one team in the country. I mean, our number one team in the country is favored to beat everyone else on this list, so it's not even that big of a loss anyway. And then Notre Dame doesn't have their coach, and they don't have any quality wins either. Notre Dame has no quality wins all year. No ranked wins, I don't think, right?
I got to think Baylor's pretty close. Like if Baylor beats Oklahoma State in that scenario,
they have
how many
losses though, right?
If they do, yeah, they do. So no,
they're
I think
10
you're
and
right.
2, and they're ranked 9. They're not.
But the only difference would be it'd be a conference champion, and they have talked about that. I mean, I agree. I don't want to say
that's a tiebreaker though.
Alabama has not played that well this year. They really haven't, and I'm saying that.
Neither is Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame hasn't done much. At least Alabama's beaten ranked teams. They had a good win against Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
Yep, and they beat Arkansas as well.
But then they look bad against LSU and they look bad against Auburn.
I mean,
so they're really up and down too.
They have been. They've been up and down. Was it the Florida game? Florida lost on that 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
So I mean, they played some close games
Florida,
against
LSU, and
bad
Auburn,
teams.
Like trash.
Yeah, I hope Georgia beats them. And then I'm with you, Nate, though. I mean, the thought that somehow we're not going to have any chaos, it's all going to be chalk this week, is probably not likely. And there's bound to be at least one name that's going to drop out of there. For UC, I hope it's not them, because I kind of hope nationally, I think the narrative will be like, see, that's why we should never rank, group of 5 teams.
Agree.
Preseason, because and let's be honest, if they hadn't started they started at 8, they were like in the preseason, I think AP poll at 8. If they weren't in the top 10, we wouldn't even be entertaining this. And so the fact that they've done this a couple years in a row, I mean, that's
not even undefeated. That you don't think they would have moved up?
No. I'm saying I think they will undefeated. They will be in, but if they lose, I'm just saying.
If they lose, the season's over. Yeah,
they were preseason ranked because of what they did last year.
Yeah, of course.
But I think
for UC to make it, it's basically because they had a great season last year too. If they didn't, they wouldn't have a chance this year.
Absolutely not.
So it's like you have to have 2 good years in a row.
True.
And then so what's the seeding going to be? What's the seeding going to be if Georgia wins relatively close, Michigan wins, Cincinnati loses, and Baylor wins? What's the seeding?
Cincinnati loses. So what? That would be.
Cincinnati loses, so that means it's Bama or Notre Dame, but at the 4 though, right? Ugh. You have to put them at 4.
I've said all along, if UC is in, that they'll be at 4, because I think everybody knows. I know, but I'm saying I think whatever team. I mean, if you go through the chaos theory, then any of those teams, the seeding almost doesn't matter, because you know that it's going to be Michigan 2 and Georgia 1 if Georgia beats Alabama, and so the seeding at that point almost doesn't matter. But it does.
Well, it does, because who are they going to play Georgia in the first round?
Well, that's
Are
where
they
I
going to
think
make Alabama do it again if they lose? They should be the
No.
4 seed if they lose again.
that'd be the thing. If they're close
They
enough,
should,
if they're
though.
going to put them into, if they beat Georgia, they'd probably be 1 and Georgia be 3. Whatever's going to happen, they're not going to
Yeah.
put them playing each other again
Yeah.
2 weeks, a month later.
So Alabama's 3 now, though. So you're saying if Alabama's 3 and loses, they're not going to move down.
I don't think Alabama can lose and stay in it. I just don't. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think they would figure out some other kind of bullcrap rationale for sticking another conference champion in
If
there.
Baylor wins and UC loses, then they're out. They're still in them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but I don't. That's why I don't like playing all these different hypothetical scenarios. It doesn't
Right.
matter because I don't think Oklahoma State and UC are both going to lose. I don't. One of them likely, one of them could. But I've said all along, I think if UC wins,
Those are both supposed to be close games.
if UC wins, they're going to be a 4 seed. They're not moving up because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no way the committee is going to take the risk of them being in the national championship game. They know that it's a ratings,
Well, the 1
they're
seed,
going
the
to
1
on
seed
the
is a
ratings.
huge advantage.
Well, they know they don't want a team that gets like 500,000 viewers on their games nationally to play in the national championship game. So they're going to want them playing Georgia, and they'll punt the ratings on the semifinal game. There's no way they're going to punt the ratings on a national championship game. That's why they've stayed at 4.
Yeah.
So regardless of what happens, that's why I say Michigan's set up to get the 2 seed and stay there. So really, when the rankings came out this week, it didn't surprise me one bit that they were where they were. And then again, I think
What do you think about the Michigan matchup with Iowa?
I mean, Iowa's offense is so bad.
They are bad.
So bad.
Their defense has only been bad. This
Please
year when
God,
their
don't
star
let them
corner
beat
gets hurt.
Michigan.
And he's
I'm
I'm
rooting for
telling you.
Michigan.
Michigan,
Me
I'm
too.
rooting for Michigan.
they'll come in with a game plan that they'll be happy as hell to beat them 18-6. Like, it won't matter. Iowa's offense cannot do anything.
Right.
Anything.
They need
They'll
special
get
teams
they'll
and
get-
defensive
bad.
They'll force
scores.
a fumble. They'll get some special teams.
Well, that's how they
find
score.
other ways to win.
Yeah.
But they just
It's
can't, they
amazing
won't be able to
coming,
keep
too.
up.
If they don't get 4 turnovers in that game, they're going to get blown out. Like, it's
Yeah.
I don't see
That defense is one of the
Iowa
best
being able to do it.
I've seen. Their
Yeah, but
defense is so
literally
amazing, though,
their
like,
offense is maybe one of the worst in the country.
Yeah, but they get
And they don't
behind
even know
two
who's playing
possessions.
quarterback.
that just shows how good that they are, though, on defense. It's just like I cannot remember the last time I saw a secondary as good as them. Now,
Actually, I think Matt,
they literally just won't throw at all.
to kind of put a bow around the whole thing, Nate, you were talking about in the lead up to the Michigan Ohio State game that you thought Ohio State might come in overconfident. And Matt brought up an excellent point that I talk about this all the time with people, is you cannot overestimate how difficult it is to play with expectations and to play with the pressure of a potential playoff berth when you haven't done it. And that includes Michigan. Any
Very
team
true.
that hasn't been through this before, you have no idea what this is going to be like. And you have no idea how much incremental pressures come in after that. And neither do we as fans. I mean, it's got to be unreal when everything's riding on that. And I saw it firsthand when Cincinnati was playing Tulsa with game day there. They played so tight in that game,
Yeah.
because they knew not only did they have to win, but they had to win convincingly to get in. And it was crazy because you see these kids that ultimately they're just college kids and they're playing with, all these expectations on them. And it's very, very difficult. And so to think that something crazy isn't going to happen, I think is, like I said, unlikely, but I don't see mass chaos this weekend. More than anything, I just pray to God that Alabama gets beat, because they should have taken their second loss last week, and they do not deserve to be in this playoff. They don't.
Yeah, and they are.
Yeah.
And Michigan is in the
I
same
just think
spot
UC
right
and
now
Oklahoma
as-
State aren't going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, and Michigan is in the exact same position right now as Ohio State was last week.
Yep.
Just coming off of this huge emotional win, now they get back up to play a
Super
crappy
letdown game.
Iowa team
Yeah.
that doesn't care.
I was
Hey, I'm gonna
worried
be
all
so
year about having to
mad.
play Iowa
I'm
in
going
the
to be
Big
so
Ten.
mad at
They
you,
didn't have
Nate,
him.
if Michigan loses.
You
I'm
can
going to
be
hold
mad
you
at me.
personally
Well,
responsible.
And look, Matt said the same thing. Last year when I thought that Ohio State team was loaded last year, with Justin Fields had his worst game of the season, the game after Michigan. Now, granted, Olave was out for that one, but that first half against Northwestern, we've seen Ohio State play pretty tight in some of these Big Ten championship games early. They stretch it out in the second half, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Michigan's maybe even trailing at halftime. But it's going to be, it won't be. I don't think that Iowa can hang with them for an entire game. I just don't.
way.
I don't. But you know what? The number 2 ranking is very precarious.
It has been, hasn't it? It's been.
I mean, for not just this year. I mean, it's always been.
Hasn't
precarious.
Iowa had the number 2 ranking at one point this year? Then immediately
Iowa's
lost.
ranked number 2.
Purdue. They had it for 1 week, and Purdue took it back.
But you know what? Purdue, no matter what, should never have a number 2 ranking. That's just insane.
So I mean, it's hard. It's hard to play with that ranking.
If Michigan, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State lose, what happens?
Here he goes. He's back in.
I don't know, man.
This episode's got to end at some point. We can't talk all these hypotheticals.
Someone doesn't have to. I hate these.
At that point, whoever brings the most amount of viewers and attendance to the game, that's who they'll pick.
How many losses How many losses does Ole Miss have? They have 2.
They're 10-2.
Yeah, 10-2. So I mean, that's what you're going to have. There's no question you're going to end up having a 2-loss team.
Everyone is going to be like 10-2 this year.
Yeah. Well, for one,
11-2, like
Notre Dame is in a prime spot for that, for chaos, because they're not playing anybody. They just get to sit back and punch their tickets. So Notre Dame's in for sure.
That's so
if
unfair.
UC and Oklahoma State lose,
not have to do that.
Yeah. So if it's let's say Georgia beats Alabama, Michigan beats Iowa. You know those 2 are in. Notre Dame's for sure in, probably the 3 seed, and you would probably then pick between a 2-loss conference champion and Baylor. That would be my pick because they actually won their conference, or Alabama. Or I mean, a 2-loss. If Oregon beats Utah, I guess they're a 2-loss Pac-12 conference champion, and Oregon's trash. Like it's crazy.
They're number 10. Yeah, I mean.
I don't see any way. I will actually be pissed if the committee puts in either Ohio State or Alabama being a 2-loss non-conference champion. That is bull crap. That is total bull crap. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how you recruit. You did not have a good enough season to deserve it. Now, I would much rather see it as much as we know or we think that Alabama would beat Baylor or Ohio State beat Baylor or whatever. I'd rather see a 2-loss Baylor conference champion in personally. So it'd be Notre Dame and Baylor for me.
Yeah, so this can really get messed up. That's the beauty of this. It can really get messed up. And I have no data to back this up, but I just have a feeling that Georgia, not really having very many close games necessarily. They've kind of
played anybody. Haven't played anybody.
Look at Alabama's been through the ringer.
Yeah, they have.
Lost. They've been through the ringer, and everyone's saying Alabama's kind of trash, which I kind of believe myself.
It's a zombie team too, man. You better cut Alabama's head off because they're going to come back like that.
Yeah.
With a minute to go and no timeouts, they went right down the field and scored on Auburn's defense. And that's the way it is with a Saban team. I don't believe they're out of it until they're out of it. I won't believe it until we finally see the rankings that Alabama's not in this thing.
And
agree. I feel like they're going to beat Georgia.
The one thing, hang on, real fast, real quick. One thing I will say for sure is we know the ACC is not going to be in it.
They have one team.
Yeah.
Unless you consider Notre Dame an ACC team. I guess.
Suck it, Clemson.
Wake Forest, baby.
Suck it, Clemson.
So I was going to say, like, for our last topic of the day, I think we should briefly do our Heisman pick.
Well, hold on. Did we hear Nate? Did we hear your prediction on the Big Ten championship?
Oh, Michigan's going to win somehow.
Did we get your 4 for the playoffs?
Score?
4 for the playoffs.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I actually went the nuclear option where Alabama beats Georgia.
Right.
And then
you just said that, didn't you?
Yeah, and then Oklahoma State wins, and then the committee has all this pressure on them. They've got to either pick Cincinnati.
He had Cincinnati out. Okay. Nate has Cincinnati. Cincinnati getting left at the altar.
I don't like to think that. That's just a prediction. I hope.
I can totally see it though, Nate. I mean,
that's why I'm thumbs down.
All the UC fans will be so mad.
The committee wants to do that so bad. They want to exclude Cincinnati.
They want any excuse to do it. Yeah, totally. A one loss Georgia will for sure get in
Sure.
over
Oh, yeah.
UC.
Yeah.
That is terrible, and it's trash. They don't deserve it. But that's the way it'll go.
All
You know,
right.
it's funny though. Their resume
So,
would still be better than Alabama, even though they lost to Alabama.
it's crazy.
They
All right,
just
so
have,
you
like,
want
one blip on the radar.
And with the
So
Heisman pick.
let's do a quick Heisman poll.
my Heisman? I'd give it to Aiden Hutchinson. I think that dude's had an unbelievable year.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't think Bryce
Agreed.
Young or CJ Stroud. Now, I think both those kids will end up being in Heisman contention for the next 3 years. But I think what Hutchinson did on the biggest stage, he was the best player on that field.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Would be great. I'd
So do
love
you
to
think
see
he will
that.
win
It's
it,
going to be a
though?
little hard.
No, I don't think they'll give it to a defensive player. But I mean,
No.
his odds, you saw what his odds went from like he wasn't even
Yeah.
considered to now
Yeah.
he's like third. So, and
Yeah.
especially if he can have a good game against Iowa, like you better watch out. We might have a defensive player win it. Might be what,
That'd be great. I'd love to have a defensive
Michigan.
player win.
2 Michigan players?
Yeah, for the defense. But you know what?
Defensive
If
players?
Alabama does lose, then
Yeah, Young's not going to get it.
So
And,
what
and
is it gonna be,
Stroud's
CJ
numbers have
Stroud
been
at that point.
Stroud's been unbelievable, and his numbers are stupid. I mean, he would probably be the,
Yeah.
you know, depending on what they do, but he doesn't have a conference championship to play in. That's the problem. Like his
There's nothing
his
in the
season's
memory.
over.
It's not a problem if Bryce Young has a bad last game. Now the problem is a lot of people do vote early. Like a lot of people have already voted.
Yeah.
But if enough people vote after a bad game against Georgia, that might hurt him. I mean,
Will it really?
the thing that
Or
was
will they just
interesting,
go, everybody plays badly against Georgia? Like this defense is outrageous. This is the best defense we've seen in a
They should
decade.
just pick
Crazy.
a player on Georgia and give it to them. I mean, the problem is they don't have anyone that's putting up eye-popping stats on Georgia because they
No, but-
rotate so much.
I love Jordan Davis. I thought he was the best defensive player in the
Yeah.
country until Hutchinson's come on.
Neil.
Hutchinson would have to have another 3 sacks against Iowa. He'd have to
could.
do something. I mean, they'd
Yeah.
have to put him out at fullback and throw a pass to him on offense, probably.
I don't
for
know,
him to
man.
actually
I
get it
think
out there.
anybody
And then
that
it would
watched
look
that
like they
Ohio
were trying.
Anybody that watched that Ohio State game, I mean, he just set the Michigan record for sacks.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. I hope he wins. I don't think he will,
Yeah.
Brian, like you
And,
said. but
dude,
I
I'm
hope he
telling
does.
you, and just get ready, Nate, when they're doing all the draft analysis of him, they're going to show him knocking Thayer Munford over again and again and again and again. He put Thayer Munford right on his ass.
Yeah, and he had some success against the other guy that was in
Yeah,
there.
DeJuan Jones. I mean,
DeJuan Jones.
it was wild. I was really it was something to
NPF,
watch. Man.
NPF had like a really good rating on what is it, Pro Football Focus is like in the 90s. Winning record is usually in the 80s. A lot of people that are playing well are in the 70s. Our left tackle got a grade of 13.
Yeah.
Yikes.
13. That's just
Well, now
good.
he did go out. He switched sides because Jones went out.
Jones got
And
hurt,
and they brought Thayer Munford over to play left tackle, and it wasn't pretty. But they still scored. I mean, and Stroud's been great. I mean, Stroud's going to be in New York for sure. So, but yeah, I that would be my pick for sure. But fellas, I got to roll. I'm late. My wife's pulling me up.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks everyone. This is a great video call. We have to do this again next year. We'll definitely have to get back together and do this. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. Anytime.
All right.
See you guys.
Take
Be
care.
good.
Later.
All right.